ZNBC TV18 presents Crypto Corner, powered by CoinDCX.
Welcome back on Crypto Corner. Today we have with us Rahul Pal, who's co-founder and CEO at Real Vision Group. Rahul, hi, thank you so much for joining in. 2025 has turned out to be a very positive year for the crypto markets. Reports suggest that it is the future of finance. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, having been involved in this space since 2012, the idea for me was always that the financial system will move its rails from the old antiquated system onto the crypto rails. And that seems to be happening at scale now all across the world as governments have realized that this is probably a more efficient way to run financial markets. So we're seeing everything from the rise of stable coins to governments issuing bonds on chain to a whole number of different things. So yes, I think it accelerates from here because it's just a more efficient way of doing things.
Rahul, how would you read various geographies when it comes to crypto adoption? Because some countries seem to be doing very well while others are really lagging behind.
What we're seeing is different speeds run by different regions and different countries. You know, the US dragged its heels for a long time. Europe managed to pass its MiCA laws. China and India have been very stop-start in its adoption. The rest of Asia has been quite aggressive in its adoption. The Middle East, too, has been very, very forward-looking. The US, after the Trump election, has super accelerated. Now, the US is the backbone of the entire world's financial system, and they're now all in on crypto. So what we're seeing is other governments around the world starting to say, okay, if the US approves it, we'll approve it too. So we're seeing an acceleration and proliferation all across the world right now. I think it's been more difficult for India and China because of capital controls. But I think, you know, there is a willingness within both of the countries to start adopting this technology as well.
Rahul, also comment on the crypto prices, that is, because we are looking at prices trading near all-time highs, but there also is a belief that we are very close to maturity. The last 3 years have seen lesser and lesser volatility. Would you say it is because institutions, high net worth individuals now are being part of this? Does that lead more credibility to the market?
I certainly think the credibility is on the rise. We've seen sovereign wealth funds, we've seen asset management firms, family offices for sure, all being involved in the space. And then we're seeing the financial system itself in the space, whether it's launching of new products or building on top of the rails. So we can see that. But really, when we look at the adoption of this technology, this has been the fastest adoption of any technology the world has ever seen, except now for AI. And that adoption curve keeps continuing. We're probably at about 600 million wallets around the world in crypto, and there's 8.5 billion people. So we've got a long way to go. Currently, the space is about a $4 trillion asset class. If you extrapolate the trend rate of adoption and assume it slows a bit as it matures, we still get to about $100 trillion by about 2032. So really, we're 4% of the way there. So it's still all to play for.
Rahul, what also seems to be doing quite well is the real-world asset tokenization. Those numbers seem to be increasing as well. And there are many people who are very, very bullish on this. What's your sense on this one?
I sense it's somewhat overinflated as a narrative, but in other ways underestimated. So what I'm talking about is things like tokenizing equities. I think that is going to be enormous because the size of the global equity market's at something like $200 trillion. It's a much more efficient way of settlement, transfer, storage, all of that kind of stuff. But I think the idea of putting real estate on chain and a lot of the ideas that people have, I think it's the people who want to sell real estate love it, but I'm not sure that many people actually want to buy it. And those that do buy real estate as a part of an investment portfolio, they tend to be able to buy it physically anyway or via instruments like REITs or whatever. So I think it's a two-speed thing. Definitely over time, anything with a title deed goes on chain, whether it's a driving license or a deed for a house or whatever. Over time, will certainly go on chain because it's much more efficient. But I think real-world assets makes it sound very acceptable for financial system and the newspapers and things like that. The reality is it's the other aspects of crypto that are probably even bigger.
How would you also look at the kind of push that we are seeing in US in sense of legislations, more reforms coming in? Of course, all of them very, very friendly, especially for the stable coins. What is the next step that you see within the technology, especially from US?
So I think the US, the next thing we will see is the full clarity on crypto regulation. Then we will see what they're going to do with the strategic reserve in Bitcoin. And then I think we have a very clear path forwards. So I think that only accelerates adoption within the US financial system. You know, as we said, we've seen the banks building on stablecoin rails. The stablecoin explosion will only continue because it's a way of financing the US deficits by getting US dollars further out into the global financial system. So I do think we see that, and I think we see the rise of Bitcoin as a reserve asset, and then we'll see a lot more of the financial industry building on crypto rails. But we'll also see Web 2 using crypto rails for things like digital ID, which are going to be desperate in a world of AI.
Rahul, while 2025 is known as the year where we've seen all-time highs in Bitcoin and various friendly legislations and policies as well, but there is another narrative as well. While there is a lot of progress, there's not so much of protection for consumers right now. The year 2025 also is seeing the highest amount of heists and frauds within the segment. What's your sense?
Yeah, I think, look, if you use the phraseology that this is both finance and a new iteration of the internet, you are always going to have this problem. And regulation needs to be there to help protect consumers and buyers and investors. But, you know, the internet itself is still rife with fraud. Every one of us every day gets an email trying to scam or phish us for money at vast scale, vaster than it is in crypto. And then if you think of the global financial economy, particularly the cash economy, it's the same thing. So I think what is interesting here is because we can record where money is moving on chain because it's immutable, it actually is very useful for government agencies to track down frauds and scam artists. But it's certainly there, and we certainly need some regulation to make sure that people are protected without excessive regulation that stops participation in this incredible opportunity for wealth creation.
Rahul, I'll wind down this conversation with one final question, and your sense on where do you see Web3, blockchain and cryptocurrencies in the next 5 years?
So as I said, I think we see the market cap as a way of thinking about the scale of this moving from $4 trillion, and maybe within 5 years' time, we get somewhere close to maybe $50 trillion. So that's a huge increase in value. So that's what attracts investors. I also think we see the number of active wallets, so i.e. kind of the number of active users, rise from 600 million today to well north of 1 billion users, maybe 1.5 billion users within 5 years. So it's going to be a very prevalent way that we are going to be using crypto over the next 5 years. We'll see everything from transferring of money, storing of wealth, investing, building on the financial rails, and using the technology for things like smart contracts. So I think it becomes less of an exotic thing and more of a normal, regular thing that becomes part of our everyday lives.
All right, so less of exotic and more of normal in next 5 years is perhaps cryptocurrencies could be in the financial space. Rahul Pal, thank you so much for joining in with that sense on Crypto Corner. That's all the time that we have on this segment. But on the other side of the break, more news and updates follow.
CNBC TV 18 presents Crypto Corner, powered by CoinDCX.